Hey everyone, welcome back to another Data Vault Innovators Community Masterclass. Once again, I am joined by Nols Ebersohn and Michael Olschimke. Good afternoon and slash morning, guys. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. So we've got a bunch of questions to go through again today. So we'll jump right into that. But obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, then please jump over to the Data Vault Innovators community platform and make sure you're subscribed there. But you can ask questions in either the YouTube chat or in the platform. And if we get time, we'll obviously get to them, or as seems to be the case, we get to them at the next iteration of that. So thanks for coming along, guys. Let's get started. Okay, first question is, what do you do when you don't have access to subject matter experts? Michael, why don't you start with that one?
Okay. I have two answers on this one. So let's say my preference is if at the client there are. So here's the thing. So I tell clients in the situation that you can give me budget and we are happy to burn it, but that wouldn't help you, right? So that's not really of value. So in the best case, what I'm doing is I'm trying to convince the client to really send in subject matter experts who know the data processes, the business processes, to help us to be successful, essentially. If that's not possible, my preferred choice, my second preferred choice is to find another project at the client where they have the budget and the subject matter experts available to help us, essentially, because I really value the presence of, or the participation of subject matter experts in a project that high, right?
Yep.
So I rather would go for another internal project where they have the time to help us to develop all these features, these reports,
Yep.
and so on. That's my second preferred choice. And what I don't do is what I see some of the clients is they just create a role in the vault because they don't know how the business will work with the solution they're building, and that's really burning money a lot. That's what I see.
Nols,
So yeah,
what do you
I
have?
always get the great.
You need a subject matter expert. So I agree wholeheartedly with Michael. If you don't have one, you need to agree with the business on what the impact would be. And the impact's this: I can become the subject matter expert. It's going to take time. It's going to take money. And then once we know what we're doing, it'll be quick to build a vault. But you can't not pay the piper. You have to become a subject matter expert. If you don't have one, you become one, and you have to pay school money. And school money is in budget burned. So if the business cannot afford to spare the person, they have to spare the budget. So yeah,
let me ask a slightly, drilling into that, I guess. Let's say that the organisation has some very old applications and they don't have anyone who really knows those anymore. Is there tools you can use, like the discovery tools and stuff, do enough, or can do you just have to spend the analysis time? How does that fit?
thou shalt not start Data Vault without profiling your data. Okay,
No.
that's a key command.
Yep.
So irrespective of whether I have the subject matter expert or not, you always profile the data.
Yep.
You start to understand how the data exists within the systems, because what we understand and what the systems do is not necessarily always in sync. This is where the subject matter expert breaches that gap. You very rapidly get there. Now, there are some really good tools in the marketplace that does some of this discovery, but there is nothing in the marketplace that will discover that the investment choice for a person in a pension fund is stored on the broker extension field called broker flag 07. There's nothing but a subject matter expert that eventually will tease out that kind of detail to it. Is it valuable? Absolutely. Is it foolproof? No. And so you then become the subject matter expert. Now, it's incumbent on you as the person engaged to bring the business to become the subject matter expert that you do not perpetuate the sins of the past, and you must capture what you gather in a wiki, some sort of knowledge base or knowledge management platform that becomes part of the project collateral. Now, if you keep that all to yourself, you may have some job security, but eventually they'll fire you anyway. That's not what you want to do, right? You want to move on to more exciting stuff. So maintaining and managing a wiki is an absolute must as part of this process. whether you have access to a subject matter expert or whether you have access to profiling or other discovery tools, that's fantastic, except you have to capture the decisions and the outcomes, and you need to become a subject matter expert if you don't have one. And you need to make sure the business understands this. It's not a data vault problem. It's a business resource problem. Two distinct things to keep in mind.
Sure. Michael, anything else to add to that one?
Only a few topics or a few points. The thing is that when we have these migration projects sometimes, and if you have a legacy system and everybody's gone who built the system, who knows the system, well, then you have to pay the price. I mean, you have to really analyze the systems because we need to know how they work, how the data looks like, and so on, right? There needs to be some source system analysis, essentially, or system analysis. That's what it is. I mean, the other option would be to have a wizard in a team, but there are no wizards, so that's not an option. So it's really analyze the source system, analyze the system you want to replace, and that's what it is. It's pure standard IT. And there's nothing even special about Data Vault here. It's standard IT stuff.
And prototyping is your friend. Prototyping is the friend because you have to then expose it to the business, go, does this smell right? And they go, no, it's supposed to look like this. You go, how's that possible?
Yeah.
And so off to the races you go, reverse engineering and figuring things out. Eventually you'll get to the secret sauce there. But it takes time, it takes budget.
And I'm sure we've all seen these projects that are very IT driven, and and either the business doesn't want to engage or IT doesn't want to let them engage, and they always go slow and they're always hard, right? Because it is that subject matter expert. But let me add one final bit to this: is in the data mesh paradigm where we're trying to have data products, do those SMEs become the data product owners? Is that kind of the idea? Is that how that works?
They're the ideal product owner.
We'll go with, yeah, perfect.
Because
all right,
they know what it is, they know the context, they know where it's supposed to happen or where it can't be used and where it should be used, all of those type of things. And they should capture that in their interface agreement, their product engagement model. So,
yeah, write it down. Absolutely. All right. Well, if you have any more questions around subject matter expertise, drop them in the comments or reach out to us. We're always happy to take questions offline. And I know, in the last, since we all talked last, there's been a lot of Q&A in the platform on the Q&A chat around helping solve a few different messages and questions from various practitioners. And I saw some of the Scalefree team were jumping in and helping with answers, and I know Bronwyn from our team was jumping in as well. So it's really good to see. So this isn't the only way to get an answer to a question, but obviously we love having content to chat about. Mm-hmm. All right, so next question. Okay, what techniques help the business to refine and confirm their requirements? The requirements are a big thing. So Nols, why don't you start with this one?
Excellent question. Assuming you have your subject matter expert involved, right? That really short circuits the requirements gathering process, right? So kind of build on each other. Rapid prototyping is not just a legitimate way of discovering how the data works, but it's also an excellent way to flush out the requirements or make sure that the requirements complete. Because you've got functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and you've got elements that all need to be brought together. In other words, functional requirements, I want to be able to drill from here to there, from this thing to that thing. Non-functional requirements, I need to have this within 5 seconds. All of these elements need to be out there. And so does it behave? Does it give me the answers I'm after? Does my business rules, and particularly, this is a valuable way to look at it, to verify a business rule, build a prototype, verify the prototype, verify the conditions of your business rules are complete, both negative and positive testing. And so requirements are not complete until you have the test requirements also captured. So good old test-driven development kind of disciplines are excellent in verifying your requirements.
Yeah, excellent. Michael, I'm sure you've got stuff to add here.
Yeah, 2 comments. So I would say there's 2 major scenarios. Either the client knows what they want. So the business side knows also one essentially. So they can express an information requirement, just like in software requirements, software development, you have software requirements. We typically have these information requirements where we essentially, where the business describes the dashboard, the report, what they want, all the details that are important for them, test cases and so on, data sources, KPIs, everything's documented. There's a template on our website that you can check out how we typically organize these information requirements. That's option number one. We, as the database team, we might need to help them to express what they want. So in many cases, our clients haven't done it before. So a lot of users, they never express a software requirement either. So we help them to get this on paper, essentially, in the right quality, in the format the developers need this, essentially. That's option number one. Option number two is if they know roughly at least what they want, some report on revenues by sales region or something, but they don't know about the data quality, they don't know what data is available, maybe even where the data comes from and so on, right? Maybe they don't even exactly know how the report should look like because they haven't seen the data yet. There's a concept called agile requirements gathering in the training, where we essentially produce a raw mart, an information mart without the application of any business rule, to create a raw report. So the raw mart is essentially in the same format, let's say dimensional model, but no business rules applied. Then we create a report on top of that. The report just presents the data from the source system in the form the user understands. It's in the typical format, a report, essentially. But it only contains raw data, no business rules applied. So it prints out on a little larger paper, DIN A3 or something, in black and white, give it to the users, and ask them give them a red pencil with it, and then ask them what's wrong with this report, because there must be something wrong. I don't believe that they will report on raw data, right? So take the red pencil and correct the report. Once they're done with that, once they made their comments, their annotations, strike through something, everything in black is raw data, everything in red is business rules. And then we go back, implement the business rules, and do it again. So give it a new version of the report. What's still wrong? We get more in red ink. That's the basic idea. That helps them to express the ideas if they don't really know the data. That's the idea.
Yeah, I love that. That's great, and it really helps you understand where the business rules are going to be applied. So, there's also different use cases, right? So it's not always a report that we're building. I'm imagining very soon a future where we're getting a requirement from a large language model saying, give me this data, and so does the way we define the requirements change based on the use case? Obviously data science type activities are going to be different to providing a dimensional model for a report. Am I right or am I wrong? Nols, why don't you help?
Absolutely. So the different use cases have a slightly different way to approach it. Data science, however, predicates it on a process where you first start with the hypothesis and then you gather some data. Then you start to train and tune your model, find whatever seems to be relevant or predictive in some form. So the data scientist is typically well versed in this iterative refining of the requirements and so on. So that's not necessarily as new a process as such. So there it's more about providing the appropriate width of data to your data scientists so that they get the appropriate components. So that is different to a general BI analytics requirement where, as Michael outlined, they may have an idea what they're after, but not necessarily completely complete in the full sense of the requirement, right down to the color scheme of the backgrounds, etc. Now, you always know that you're on a good path when everyone looks at the data and then they start quibbling about the colors. Then you know you're in a good place. It means that the data has passed the smell test. It's basically somewhat within the expectation, and then it's just a preference. It's just arm wrestle about the color scheme. If you get to that point, you're in a good place. You got the business rules nailed. You got the data in the right quality expectations, and so once that is done, then that's a good sign.
Perfect. All right, let's move on. Okay, Michael, this one's for you to start with. So what traps should you look out for when you start your Data Vault journey?
Yeah, I think so we're dealing a lot with technical teams, to be honest. So lots of people who know a lot of technologies, they know Python, databases, they know how to process data and so on, right? And they also know how to deal with infrastructure. So techies. The thing is, and I myself techie as well. So I have a computer science degree, my first degree essentially, and then got a MSIS degree essentially afterwards. So the thing is, techies like technology solutions, right? So technology solves everything. That's maybe the best starting point for them. And the problem is that the biggest trap, I think, is that you start building the platform first. The platform essentially. That's it. The team focuses quickly on the non-functional requirements, that you want to automate your deployments, you want to automate the data warehouse with Data Vault, right? You want to have a nice and fancy dashboarding solution and so on. So you look at all these technology solutions, you build a platform, but when you start implementing the first functional requirements, the first report, you realize that the platform you designed doesn't fit for your business, for your data flows from the source system, essentially, right? So there's something wrong, and you have to essentially rework your solution. So what we typically do is we make sure that the team is really focused on the functional requirements first, build some report. And all these non-functional requirements we have to get done as well, because the customer, the client, they want to have a reporting solution. They want to have that's the biggest business value for them. But they also want to have a solution that's compliant with GDPR or with other laws, that's automated in regarding testing, regarding loading, deployment, and so on. So they want all that. But the primary reason why they come to us to build a data warehouse is not because they want to have a data lake in the cloud. They want to have reports and dashboards. That's the business value. So we focus the team on the functional requirements, but with every sprint, I expect that the team is also implementing some of the non-functional requirements, but not at first. Major focus should be on the functional requirements.
That's a good lesson. I mean, they're paying for a platform, but what they really want to see is output, don't they?
Yeah.
So, Nols, what do you have to add?
What problem are you trying to solve? We've seen quite a few implementations where the problem is being solved before it's become a problem, and then the business goes, but it's never been a problem, and so it never adopts it. So that's the first issue. So find a business problem, a business outcome that has value, and focus on that. So very much in line with Michael's description there. So, which then also requires some sort of champion, somebody that has both the responsibility and accountability, and therefore the appropriate political clout within the organization to own the program and be able to roll out the political stumbling blocks that invariably do come up in conversations within an organization. Change is always resisted. So if you are going to implement something new or something different, then you need a change champion. So that's a critical success factor for all of these programs. So have a good champion in place, then have something of value that is delivered. And we've seen a number of times replacing something existing is not good value. So have something new, something specific with explicit value that it drives the program, as opposed to being a me too. Me too never gets the love that it's supposed to have. And so from that perspective, it's a critical success factor.
I mean, I get to engage probably at a steering committee level fairly often, and this all rings true. And to me, it summarizes up into: don't boil the ocean. Make sure that you do things in thin slices, and that each slice delivers value to some part of the business. It's we should all be living by that mantra, I think, and it's very easy for a governance body to say, let's replace that system so that we no longer are paying for that old legacy whatever. But the business doesn't. The business users don't care. They're not seeing the bill, so they're not necessarily caring that that's being replaced. And also, that's boiling the ocean, because usually that system's been in for years, so it's probably producing hundreds of reports, and you're going to be at it for a long time if you're trying to replicate all of that stuff without delivering anything new. So, I think we're all on the same page about that, and I've seen that really play out in a not a positive way at the steering committee level. So, all right. So this next one's actually essentially an extension of the last one, which was, what do you do when you have team members who don't want to learn or adopt or work with Data Vault? Michael, why don't you start off on that one?
Okay. So in Germany, we have these nice pieces made out of glass windows, and I put a chair next to the window, placed them there, and asked them to look out of the window. The thing is, we don't have them often, to be honest, but we sometimes have people where they don't agree with data vault. They want to see it fail. That's only the expectation they have, and that's what they're waiting for. So you can wait on the window, and you can watch us doing, but don't interfere with what we're doing here. Typically, it's not that bad. So I've never done this, to be honest, right? But it's the extreme version.
Yeah.
Typically,
I thought you were going to say you pushed them out.
No, typically, what I do is I ask them, typically it works this way that you can ask them to sit back and watch at what we're doing, and then look at the results, and then we discuss the results. Focus on the results. First of all, it keeps them out of the process a bit, and if you want to be successful, right? And it takes too much time to explain everything and argue everything and so on. Just let me do it, and then we discuss the results. If you don't like the results, we can talk about the process. But let's build the results. One sprint, two sprints, and yeah, that's the idea. And if that doesn't work, the window is there as well.
Yeah, excellent. Nols, we've probably had a few more examples of where we have this challenge. I guess Data Vault is far more readily adopted in Europe than it has been at this point in Australia. So, any other tips for bringing someone around to the light side of the force?
Humans are interesting. There's a mathematical formula for how change happens. If the sum of perceived pain of the current is more than the sum of the perceived pain of the future, change will occur. So it's a little mathematical. What it simply says is there needs to be a reason for somebody to accept change. So if you have a person that is not willing to, or not interested in Data Vault, or not willing to look into Data Vault, or interested in the success of the project, then you need to understand why. Sometimes it's a personal thing. They built their own little reporting solution. They've been the master and commander of that for the last 20 years, and so this is a threat to their credibility, to their livelihood, etc. So you need to understand why people are reticent to participate or adopt a new approach. So that's one issue. Now, hopefully there's something of they don't know, so it's just an education process, or they don't want to because there's some sort of political issue, because if they adopt something new, they have to admit that they were wrong, or they perceive that to be the process, or they simply go, no. There's a factor of irrational resistance to change. That has occurred.
Yeah.
And so you need to understand that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've seen multiple times that those that are resistant, once they do change their mind, they're the biggest advocates. Once it clicks in their head, they become the biggest supporters, and they go around the business explaining why it's going to be a benefit. So it's lovely when we see that happen, because you kind of almost see the penny drop, and
absolutely.
And so I think it's a challenge accepted kind of scenario when we meet someone like that. How do we help convince you? How do we show you, as you said, Michael, sit them down and let them watch, and then it's hard to argue with positive results. So, all right, we have one final question for you today, guys. Okay, so how do you manage a Data Vault model as it gets bigger? So, assuming you have multiple modelers contributing, how do you actually manage that and merge, different parts of the model that different modelers are working on together? How does that actually happen? Nols, why don't you start with that one?
Good tools always help when you start managing larger and larger models. And so that helps. Governance is another fundamental thing that you need to have in place. And it doesn't have to be heavy-handed, but understanding that you're all delivering to the same target, to the same platform, etc. A level of governance and coordination is required, because sometimes the organization doesn't talk to each other. So you may find duplicate work, you may find divergent work, and so governance is a critical success factor for those managing the change impacts. And then it does become essentially a tool conversation about, all right, these models are becoming unwieldy, or the performance or so on becomes a little bit harder to do. But then again, there are if there's a technical problem, there's usually a technical solution to it, fairly easily and readily available. The governance is probably the little harder aspect of that process to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts for us, Michael?
Yeah, so 2 comments on that one again. The first thing is people ask us often what kind of tools we're using for modeling the raw data vault, and I always tell them none, because for the raw data vault is really generated using metadata. So it's really about tables where you set up your metadata essentially. That's number one. And then for the information marts, I like to model. So I use take any data modeling tool of your choice, doesn't matter really. Mm-hmm. And that will be model the star schemas with the business together. They understand in a graphical way how the facts look like, the dimensions look like. We can discuss the attributes and so on, the measures and so on. So the information marts we model, but they are relatively compact, right? Because we create many information marts, fit for purpose essentially.
Yep.
And then there's a gap between the raw data you have in your metadata sheets and the information marts that you have in your data modeling tool. And the gap is bridged by the business vault. And the business vault is really about coding, in my opinion. So it's not modeling either. We just code it. That's number one. The other thing is, in the book, in chapter 3, in the methodology chapter, we have 2 or 3 metadata sheets where we discuss how to manage the raw data vault, essentially. The promise when you have parallel teams, and we have customers where they have 10 or 12 parallel data vault teams working all together, again, or deploying against the same target, you have coordination issues. You have to coordinate a bit because, the worst thing is that for the raw data vault, you have 2 different teams, 2 independent teams ingesting the same source data set. That in the best case, they realize that because you have naming conventions in place and the source table ends up in the same target table. So they realize, at least by the latest when they deploy everything, that something is wrong. That's the worst case, the best case, and that's what I'd say. The problem is when the namings, how they name the entities, doesn't really match. Then you got redundant entities, which is not a big problem in Data Vault because we can refactor this later, actually. So in the worst case, you just deploy it. You have two data flows from the same source system table into two different sets of raw data vault entities, and you can fix that later, essentially. That's number one.
Yeah.
But you can also coordinate. There's a I double check the name. There's a source table to data vault tables matrix where we essentially keep track of which team is developing which source tables in which sprint, essentially. And it's really driven by the source. So you split the effort by the source tables, essentially. That's how we deal with the parallel work at the raw data vault level.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, it sounds like it becomes a challenge, I guess, when things get really big. But I guess you just have to wrap that governance, a governance council, and I guess come together when someone decides they want to create some new business keys. Everyone should agree. It seems fairly reasonable anyway. I might be oversimplifying it because I don't do it.
You have to talk to your other colleagues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Classical project management and communication, absolutely.
Yeah. Who would have thought communication? As you said right at the start, we're dealing with technical teams. Often they just want to build a technical solution, and the answer is actually talk to each other.
That's why I always tell you have to communicate with the team members, but you can use Teams or Zoom or whatever you choose, right? So it's all good. You don't have to talk to them indirectly. That's all right.
Yeah, perfect.
But communicate.
Perfect. Yeah, they can use ICQ or something really old.
ICQ,
yeah. Excellent. All right, we are done with questions for today, guys. Thanks for joining again for another masterclass. And if you're watching, I hope that some of these topics were valuable. And if you had any thoughts or questions, just drop them anywhere that you're watching this. We'll find them and we'll get to them next time. So thanks for joining again today, guys. Michael, have a great day. Nols, have a great evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Have a great evening.
Don't forget to hit like, share this with your friends or your colleagues, and subscribe, of course, or join the DVIC.